Hola, hola.
Okay. Bonjour. Hello, I'm here to talk about people-powered money on the Trustlines network. My name is Aleeza Howitt. I'm American. I've been working on Trustline since 2019. My role is research and business development. I am based in Germany and the New York area. And just a disclaimer, I'm going to be throwing around some financial terminology, but please do not interpret these in the legal sense of the words. I'm just using them colloquially, and I hope that nobody here is going to sue me for doing so. Just a brief outline. We're going to start with some of the principles of financial inclusion that inspired this project. I'm going to talk about the definition of a trust line, walk you through that. And then we're going to discuss the Trustlines protocol as a technology stack. And we're going to introduce you the Trustlines app, which you can download today and test out. And then I will conclude with an inspiring, profound summary, some commentary on the state of the world and financial inclusion. Right, so financial inclusion. What if there's a better type of money? I think that is something that everyone in this room kind of shares as a goal. We're interested in creating a better type of money so that we can have a more inclusive economy. And we've isolated kind of some principles of financial inclusion, starting with accessibility. Money should be accessible to anybody. You shouldn't have to use an ID to access a medium of exchange. The infrastructure on which your monetary system is built should be censorship resistant. And we should be using money that supports human-centered monetary design. So we should build off the success of local and community currencies when we're designing a new monetary system. Which brings us to our answer to these questions, these obstacles to financial inclusion, which is Trustline's people-powered money. Essentially, we've built a system of mutual credit based off of individual trust relationships. And I will walk you through that so you understand it. What is a trust line? Has anyone here heard that term before, trust line? Some of the people I work with and others. This is a trust line. A trust line is two credit lines issued bilaterally between two people who trust each other. So Alice and Bob, they're friends. They know each other in real life. Alice is willing to, really actually lend Bob $10 at any point in time. Because they're friends. She knows him. She trusts him. And Bob is willing to do the same to Alice. So what the two of them can do is they can just formalize that agreement. They can write it down. And that is a trust line. Alice issues Bob a $10 credit line, and Bob issues Alice a $10 credit line. How do you pay someone using a trust line like that, a mutual credit line? So suppose Alice and Bob go out for drinks, and Bob pays for Alice's beer. Alice should then repay Bob by, well, what she would say normally is she would say, I owe you $5, assuming it was a $5 beer. So instead of just saying that, what she can do is she can send him a $5 IOU over their trust line. And what that does is that increases Bob's available credit with Alice, so that goes from 10 to 15. And with Alice's credit line with Bob, it decreases the available credit. 10 minus 5 is 5. So what is the advantage to Alice and Bob writing down that transaction? Suppose Alice wants to transact with Charlie. Now Charlie doesn't know Alice. He doesn't trust her. He doesn't have a credit line with her, a trust line with her. He's not going to. But Alice wants to transact with him. So what she does, she looks at the network, and she tries to see if they have any mutual friends. Mutual friends with trust lines between them. Because what you can do is a path of connected trust lines can actually be used to connect strangers so that they can make a transaction. So here we see that Alice and Charlie actually share a mutual friend, and that is Bob. And each of them happen to have a $10 trust line with Bob. So this path has sufficient capacity for Alice to send a $5 IOU through Bob to Charlie. And we call this a multi-hop payment. You could also say it's Alice is rippling a transaction through Bob. What really happens is Alice sends Bob a $5 IOU, and Bob sends Charlie a $5 IOU. So at the end of this transaction, Charlie is +5, Alice is -5, and Bob is net zero, because before he had $10 in credit with Alice and $10 in credit with Charlie, but now he's got 15 in credit with Alice and 5 in credit with Charlie. It still totals to $20 in credit, available credit. So multi-hop payments, they function like payment in kind. Charlie agrees to the sale. He's still +5, but he's +5 denominated in credit that he finds valuable, namely with Bob, who he trusts. You might wonder, well, okay, that's all fine and well, but what about when Bob and Charlie want to settle their balance? So what we find is that in a system with enough participants, settlement is mostly unnecessary. And that's because Bob might want to transact with Dave, and Dave is just someone else in the network who's connected to him through Charlie. So he can actually use his balance with Charlie and ripple that through Charlie to Dave. So they're settling, Bob and Charlie are settling that $5, but he's able to push that credit through Charlie to Dave and maybe make a transaction with Dave. And transfers like this can go back and forth multiple times, so that ultimately settlement is mostly unnecessary. Moreover, the transfers, we're incentivizing transfers that settle balances, that reduce balances, rather than transfers that grow balances, if that makes sense. So what about Sybil attacks? What about Eve? Eve decides that she's going to try and attack the network with fake credit. So she creates $10 million trust lines with herself. And she says, ha ha ha, I'm going to use this to buy a Lambo. Ultimately, Eve's spending limit is constricted by the people that she actually knows who trust her. So here she is friends with Alice. Alice and Eve, they know each other in real life. Alice is willing to trust Eve with $10, but not with $10 million. And she's not stupid enough to trust Eve, Eve's multiple personalities. She's only going to make a trust line with one Eve, that's it. And Eve is going to have trouble opening a trust line with anyone else in the network who doesn't actually personally know her as well. So as you can see, Eve's spending ability is really constrained by the real people who trust her and who let her into that network. So she can only spend within the rest of the community to the extent that her real friends will let her. You might wonder, well, is this money? To me, this looks like money. This feels like money. It's alternative. It's an alternative medium of exchange that anyone can issue. And moreover, it's created as needed by its users. It obtains its value from real-world trust relationships. And most importantly, it's accessible to anybody with a friend. To put this in perspective, there are different types of money in the world. Most of us are familiar with government-issued money, which is dollars or euros that you keep in your wallet. There's also bank-issued money, money issued by private commercial banks, so the credit that you might have in your bank account. There's also commodity money, which you could say gold, or you could say that Bitcoin is a type of commodity money that has an intrinsic value. But there's, in particular, that's different from the other three, there's people-powered money. There's money that's issued by people. And what do we mean by that? There's if you go out for drinks with someone, with your friend, and your buddy pays for your beer, you can say, well, I owe you a beer. That's money. That's real money. And the cool thing about that money is you don't have to consult anybody, any central authority, in order to create that, that medium of exchange. And you're not benefiting anybody else when you're creating that kind of money. So that's kind of what we're working towards here. Which brings us to the Trustlines protocol. So what is that? Trustlines protocol consists of 4 components. We've got the Trustlines blockchain, which is a minimum viable proof-of-stake sidechain to Ethereum. We have the smart contract, which contains all the business logic and the smart contracts. We have the relay servers, which calculate the optimal paths for sending transactions through the network. And the client library, which is a high-level API for interacting with the smart contract through the relay servers. The Trustlines protocol is a free open-source technology stack designed to solve obstacles to financial inclusion. It is actually agnostic to the idea of people-powered money. It is something that can be used by anyone for any use case in whatever way you can imagine. Crucially, the Trustlines blockchain, which is a minimum viable proof-of-stake sidechain to Ethereum, it uses anonymous validators. These validators earn rewards for each block they create and each transaction they include, denominated in the Trustlines network coin. They have to stake ETH on the main chain in order to become a validator in the first place. Their responsibilities are to run a node with high uptime. Don't attack the network, please. Monitor the chain for misbehavior and participate in governance. Validator is born when you participate in the auction. The next one, by the way, is in July. We can talk afterwards if you're interested in becoming a validator. And most validators would exit automatically after a fixed period when you get your stake back and you take whatever rewards you've made at that point as well. So how can a new user join the Trustlines network without buying Trustlines coins? We have actually created something called the Delegates to solve this problem. The Delegates pay transaction fees on behalf of the end user in exchange for fees set in the smart contract system, denominated in the currency network in which they're taking part. So for example, we see Alice here. Alice is a totally normal person, but she wants to join the Trustlines network. She has no TLC. She doesn't have crypto. She doesn't even know what crypto is. She finds a delegate to pay her fee and to pay her transaction fees. The delegate can either decide to do this for free because they believe in the community currency that she's taking part in, or the delegate can set a currency network fee. So a fee equivalent to the Trustlines coin fee, transaction fee, but denominated in the currency network in which Alice takes a part. So in order for that transaction to happen, Alice and the delegate would both sign a transaction. The currency network would register that Alice owes the delegate a currency network fee. And why would the delegate do this? The delegate would you can imagine someone who's, participating in a currency network where, maybe perhaps denominated in beers like we've created here for your enjoyment. And maybe a delegate finds this kind of currency valuable and wants to be able to drop into any community and use the credit that they've earned in this community currency network wherever they go. They want to be able to purchase something using this currency, using Alice's credit denominated in this currency, wherever they go. And they value that equivalently to the fees that they're paying in Trustlines coins. Okay, so Trustlines App. I'm happy to say that we've got for you the Trustlines mobile app just released. You can get it at trustlines.app. And the cool thing about this is that you can basically get onboarded to the system in seconds. You download the app, you create a trust line with a friend, anyone who trusts you, and then you can interact with anyone in your community. You can make transactions through the whole network. So in the app, you can already see the customizability of this currency system. You can choose to use a currency of any denominations, that includes euros, but also maybe work hours or time, Bitcoin, or as I said earlier, beers. That's a fun currency network. You can change other things about the currency network if you're interested in creating your own community currency. So for example, you can set the network to be open or closed or permissioned. You can set an interest rate in your currency network could be positive or a negative interest. And you can restrict the number of trust lines that each user is allowed to create. Right, and so this brings us back to the principles of financial inclusion. So I hope that I've shown, the concept of a trust line as a financial tool is super accessible. You don't need an ID to use it. All you need is a friend. And we've built it on using the Trustlines protocol, which is censorship-resistant infrastructure. And we've made it extremely customizable to allow you to experiment with different types of currency designs and monetary design for a more human-centric economy. To bring this back to reality, there are about 2 billion people excluded from the current financial system who don't have any bank accounts or access to traditional financial services. But an overwhelming number of people do have mobile phones. So we think that building something like this that's accessible from a mobile device, it could be really powerful. And we hope that you will try it out and let us know what you think. Thank you very much. My name is Aleeza, and it's great to be here.
All right, thank you very much, Aleeza, for the insights on Trustlines. Are there any questions in the audience? Maybe, yep, lovely. Fantastic. Oh, yes.
Yeah, the idea of these trust lines, they kind of look like payment channels, right? And then like a network of payment channels starts to sound a lot like, Lightning or Raiden or something like that. I guess Lightning or Raiden would be like, what's the main difference between Trustline network and a payment channel network?
Well, we're hoping that this is something, like we're going for the idea of people-powered money. So in a system like this, anyone who wants to can join the system and use it to create money wherever they need. So I think the driving purpose is completely different. We're creating an alternative medium of exchange. We're not attempting to solve scalability issues. Does that somewhat answer your question? But it's a very similar principle, how it works.
Is the idea still like in a payment channel, you would have eventually a settlement, right? So you would kind of return back to, of course that's a layer 2 thing, right? But okay, so the idea with the trust lines is that you would sort of have this thing sort of growing and then producing more.
Wait, can you say that again?
So the idea, like, how would I say, is the idea is that this would like become a medium of exchange, but at the same time you could build your own communities like local money. Yeah, I guess I'm like asking like what's the sort of end game for Trustlines? Is it going to be like a
well, it is what you want it to be, what you make of it. I mean, we're interested in the idea of people-powered money and turning this into a medium of exchange. That's what I want to see. But you're right to say that it shares a lot of the principles of payment channel technology.
No, it is.
Right. Yeah, we're dealing with social collateral.
I have a question. Help me understand. Is it possible to integrate this with communities? So obviously it's possible to kind of create an abstract concept of a community inside of the Trustlines network and app, but say I want to connect this to kind of a pool, let's call the DAO pool or community funding pool, and I only want these transactions. I want to actually ensure that it can only happen inside the circle and actually connect this to a front end that is actually part of this community. Is this possible already, or is that on your roadmap?
Wait, can you say that again? You want to?
How can I integrate Trustlines with any front end app that I have? Or can I not do that? I can only use your app and
No. Yeah, you can build whatever. Everything is open source. You can build whatever you want, and just let us know, and maybe we can work together.
yeah, grants. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So is there a stake in when you establish, or it's literally just I owe you money and you owe me money?
Yeah, it's literally I owe you money and you owe me money. If you're a validator, then you're staking ETH.
Right, so I think, right, that's what I was thinking. So that's really the difference between state channels and this, is that there's, yeah, okay.
Hey, I have two questions. The first one is, how does it compare to Circle UBI? And the second one is, so I imagine that out of this, there could be an identity system that emerges out of this, because we have some kind of a reputation system with the dimension of financial services. And how do you imagine, how could this work out as an identity solution as well?
Okay, so Circles UBI is a very similar project that is, conceptually, it would be as if you had a maximum limit on the amount of credit that you could have out at any one point in time with any person. That's sort of what it is, because Circles is a basic income project. You could recreate that concept using the Trustlines protocol, actually. I think it's still in development, but they're using XDAI, which is proof of authority, so not as censorship resistant as we are. And what was the next question? I forgot.
Was about how can we use Trustlines as a decentralized identity solution?
Okay. Yeah, like you could look at the graph and approximate identity based on that. You can use it for also calculating people's credit scores in a totally decentralized way. You're right. It could be used like that. You might want to change certain features about the currency networks if that's your goal, because you wouldn't be exactly incentivizing unique identity. The incentives are slightly different. It's about, well, how creditworthy do you think your friends are, and et cetera. So you'd have to take that into account, but the principles are pretty similar. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I guess that was the last question. Just give up for Aleeza once again, and for Trustlines, and thank you very much for coming. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Congratulations.